my ability to give my unique gift. So in other words, the ability to express my unique gift based on the needs around me depends on lines and circles in myself to be in full bloom.
What is our intention? So I'm going to invite everyone to write into the chat box. Why are you here? What is it that we're doing here in this evolutionary community? And so let's explore this together. What is your intention for being here? And I'll read some of them. And thank you, Krista Josefa, who's also sitting next to me across the room. So certainly one of my intentions is to be here in this space and to love and to be loved. And these relationships that keep deepening, these lifelong commitments that really, really matter and really sustain me in my daily life. It's just stunning. And let's see what else people are saying. And at the festival, so we just finished Eros Mystery School the other day, and I was inviting a lot of people to show up at One Mountain Many Paths. And a lot of people find that they can't show up because they're busy with their family or some such thing on a Sunday night or afternoon. And I just told people, like, even if you're not paying, you're walking around or you're putting your kids to bed or whatever, if you have us on, that we're actually literally building this field of intention, of love, of purpose by just feeling each other, holding this space together. So I want to mention that to everyone that's actually here to encourage others to just hold the space with us, however it is that they can be here. So Terry Nelson writes, to fulfill my covenant with the future. Right, we do have a covenant with the future, and it is a big part of why we're here. Um, uh, what else? Carla, connection and love, both to give and receive. Rob Vanderloo, who I just got to dance with on Thursday night. I want to open up deeper and deeper, open up the field, deep longing to do that together. Yes, Rob, when we were together the other night at Eros Mystery School, which was such a wonderful and deep and life changing experience, it did feel more possible and more beautiful and more true and more right. And so I didn't mention it in my introduction, but the next Eros Mystery School will be in November. So let's all get that on our calendars. Carol Tuff writes, we are all following the path of living with an open heart. Shahat writes, expand love and intimacy globally to work out the existential risk that we are facing. So many people are writing here, and thank you. Luke, one more. I am here for the invigoration of the framework that makes the most sense to me about what we are doing on this earth at this time. An angel who joined us online at the Eros Mystery School to feel each other, love and joy to transform in homo amor. And yes, Suzanne, November 2024, not November 2023. Thank you. So please do keep writing your intention. But what I'm going to dive into here is that each week I say, our intention is a planetary awakening and evolutionary love through unique self symphonies. So the point of cosmoerotic humanism is to show that the human is welcome in the universe. We are welcome in the universe. This is such a profound reality that is so it's not known by so many people. I just think of my children who think, oh, we have all this existential risk that we're facing. It would just be better if human beings would get kicked off the earth. And it's just so painful and not true. And it's not the solution to the existential crises that we face, to the meta crisis. The human being is needed and wanted. And so we often can't find ourselves in the universe for many reasons, but two of these reasons are definitely due to the way the languages of science and the languages of daily discourse alienate us from the universe. The story at the center of culture, at the center of science, is depersonalized and explicitly devoid of meaning. So, what does this language of the Dharma or cosmoerotic humanism tell us? We are wanted, we are needed, we are asked to step into a very intimate relationship with the universe itself, but also with each other. And in the manifest world, it's really important to understand that there is no split between our consciousness and meaning, and our consciousness and value, and our consciousness and story, and the way that that all interpenetrates and interdigitates as the universe itself. So it's not that they're all exactly the same, but they are inter-included, and you can't split these words: consciousness and meaning, consciousness and value, consciousness and story. They are structures of reality. And so our intention is to keep living that and being that, um, and helping others to live and be that, and that there's meaning and value all the way up the evolutionary chain, and all the way down the evolutionary chain, and that all of those are inherent to cosmos itself. As Dr. Marc Gafni says so often, we are chapter in verse in the universe, a love story, and the plot lines of the universe live inside of us. So this being wanted by the universe, being the cosmoerotic human, this is the invitation to break through to an entirely new identity, and is the most wildly awake move of all. It fuels the planetary awakening in love. And when we do that with each other, between each other, when we boundary break with all the appropriate boundaries kept, these limiting beliefs, when we step into the radical fullness of presence, and we break through to these depths of these new relationships, we more and more become cosmoerotic beings rippling out in meaning and value. So, and it's just heart-wrenching, isn't it? We see in culture the cementing of identities, the weaponization of identities, identities as power. But here in this space, here in this community, here at Eros Mystery School, here in our one-on-one relationships, here in our work of the Great Library, we are invited to consider and to live into this invitation of the democratization of enlightenment. And as Dr. Gafni says also, to be sane is to know your identity. So we can evolve the languages of science and daily discourse to be so much more meaningful. As Howard Bloom wrote, who collaborates with us here, a scientist who collaborates with us here at the Center for World Philosophy and Religion, he says, one of my jobs in science is to find the God inside of us. So that is our intention here at this time between worlds, in this time between stories. Let us tell a new story of value that raises all boats. That story is not just a human creation, just like meaning is not a human creation, just like value is not a human creation. So with that, we are welcome here. We are wanted here. And to close my intention setting, I share this quote from an Indigenous activist, Isaac Murdoch. I live my life to the fullest and enjoy all the beauty that surrounds me. I love everything. I hold in my heart we are in a massive crisis and worldwide ecological and societal collapse. I pray hard. The time is now to stand strong and to unite all life on earth. There's no need to panic. We are students of the land and the sky and of outrageous love. We apprentice from the great powers of the universe, and we welcome the stars as our family. We learn the old ways, the wisdom traditions, the ways of mystics. We become a force of nature and dedicate our entire everything to Earth, to evolution, and to each other. We take time to master. We bow at each other's feet, and we walk the woods, and we howl with the coyotes. We fuck for God. We are the great all that is moaning with the pleasure of existence. And with that, I turn my word to David.
Wow, I have goosebumps. Anyone else have goosebumps out there? I mean, just to be able to face these myriad crises and challenges to our very existence with the deepest response possible, with this deepest intention. So I'm just, wow, I'm opened up. My mind is larger, my heart is larger. I feel like I can do more now and be more now. So we're all coming out of a mystery school, right? Eros Mystery School, which was led very beautifully by our very own Krista Josepha and many others. But Krista was at the helm, and it's just been such a pleasure to be here with everyone. And many of you that are here today were also there. And so we're kind of, after an event like that, and you're immersed in something so profound and powerful with the most profound teachings available and also the most profound experiences of being a human are available, we're in this middle point and transitioning back like, okay, how do we take this into our world? How do we take this into our everyday life? And so today this represents, our one of our ways that we're doing that. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and then I'll try to do that. How does that sound? Okay. So what I want to do is, Christina alluded to this intimate universe. God is the infinity of intimacy. So I'm going to speak to that a little bit as sort of the greatest context that we know we have, and then I'll move into one of the most profound emergence of that intimate universe, which is what we call unique self. And then I'm going to move into lines and circles, and I'll explain what that means. And those of you that were at the mystery school know that was the topic. So I'm just going to touch on that. It's my humble attempt to weave those together and articulate some of them. And specifically, then I want to go into a practice. So towards the end, we're going to have a practice of how do we actually live integrating, using a practical exercise, how do we live an integration of lines and circles? Okay, so that's what I'm going to try to do today. But first, I'll start with our love code, our evolutionary love code, which is the code, right? The framing of what we're doing here. Okay, so here's this week's evolutionary love code. Paste in the chat box. We live in an intimate universe. The intimate universe lives in us. Intimacy is the quality of love. Allurement is the quality of intimacy. The God you don't believe in doesn't exist. God is the infinity of intimacy, and God is the possibility of possibility. To change the trajectory of your life, you cannot repeat yesterday's intimacy. In fact, idolatry is the worship at the altar of yesterday's intimacy. Today's intimacy transcends and includes yesterday's intimacy, but adds new parts that never were before. Intimacy generates emergence. Now that's a lot right there, right? But let's just start with the first part. We live in an intimate universe. Okay? What does that mean? If we think about the question as what is reality? This is what the response is. What is reality? Reality is an intimate universe, meaning nothing is separate from anything else. There's a connectivity between everything, and there's also an evolving connectivity. There's an evolving intimacy. So certain things are actually more intimate than others. Certain areas in the cosmos are more intimate than others. There's actually And Marc often says that evolution is the progressive deepening of intimacies. Okay, so we live in an intimate universe. There's a shared space within which all things arise and are participating in that shared space. Second, the intimate universe lives in us. What does that mean? The universe is out there, right? How could it live in us? What does that mean? Well, it's we're not separate from it, right? So if the universe is an intimate universe, then how could we not be participating in that? How can that not also be part of actually what shows up within us? But if we look at just kind of the exterior in our body and actually ask ourselves, how does the intimate universe live within us? We actually look at intimacy, again, which is shared identity, which is the shared space, the shared field within which diversity, difference, otherness arises, right? So we'll just start with that. And we'll look at in our own body, we have an evolution of intimacy. We have, prefrontal cortex here, but that actually requires a reptilian brainstem in our evolution, right? There's a part of our bodies that actually was built before we became on this planet, on this earth, right? And we can keep going back and back and back and realize that the very cell, the existence of our body relies upon a cell, which is a unique configuration of intimacy, where you have different parts of the cell that actually used to be separate. For example, the mitochondria that used to be separate, that formed a membrane around it, and it became a unique configuration of intimacy that allowed for life to emerge, right? And so we can keep doing this sort of thought experiment and see how the intimacy of the universe, the evolution of intimacy, actually lives within our very bodies, right? So that's just a taste of what that refers to. But I want to move towards the notion of intimate communion, which is that this field of reality, there's no value that's separate from anything else, right? And let's see if I can weave this together and eventually get to lines and circles, right? So we have the actual one of the, let's see, how do I move forward on this? The actual vector of this evolution of intimacy is increasing uniqueness, right? So actually, when the every emergent that arises in evolution actually is more unique than that which came before, right? And one of the emergence that we talk about here is unique self. So the unique self is actually a unique emergent, an emergent out of evolution that is an integration of two qualities, at least two qualities, but I'm going to just talk about two right now. One is the experience of my separation, the experience of my locality, the experience of this is me, this is my boundaries end here, right? And the other quality is the experience that actually I'm not separate, I'm one with all it is, right? There's actually a field and I'm connected with it all. And maybe we can locate that within ourselves and see how we feel into that experience, right? So the separation, or what Barbara Marx Hubbard called the local self, the sense that I'm actually here, right? And then what Barbara Marx Hubbard called the universal self, right? Or what we're calling true self, which is that which is one with all that is, right? And so when these two qualities of the cosmos actually merge within us, we actually experience ourselves as a unique expression of that one field. And so this is how evolution has moved, right? So, and I'm expressing it in terms of these two qualities because it kind of sets us up for lines and circles. Okay, so I'm just going to quote Marc for a second. So here's a quote from Marc actually from this past week. He said that, my ability to give my unique gift, so to actually give the gift that's a function of my unique self, depends on lines and circles in myself in full bloom. And to the extent to which those line and circle qualities are fractured is the extent to which my life is a mess. Okay, so I'm going to unpack that here. So lines and circles, how do we get to lines and circles? Well, what is reality? Reality at its fundamental level is lines and circles all the way down and all the way up. That's where we're kind of starting. There's actually these qualities of line and circle energies, if you will, or qualities from the very Big Bang, right? And as evolution has progressed, you have the progression of intimate communion or line and circles that are united, that are integrated, that are intimate with one another, kind of at more greater and greater wholes, right? So let's see here. Maybe I can go back to first some quick examples. Let's do some quick examples. And actually, by the way, the lines and circles, oftentimes we think of them as masculine and feminine, right? It's actually, that's the quick way of understanding it, masculine and feminine. But as Mark likes to point out, this is actually prior to and beyond masculine and feminine. So line tends to be associated with masculine qualities, circle, feminine qualities. But masculine and feminine only emerged in evolution about, at the earliest, about 250,000 years ago, right? When humans have been around. It's a gendered expression, but in reality, it's been around, the manifest world of the universe has been around as far as we can tell for 13.8 billion years prior to that. Right? So what was happening before that? Well, we call those lines and circles. And this comes from Isaac Luria, a Kabbalist mystic who kind of started describing these several hundred years ago. And so it happens, it's everywhere. If we just look around, we can see. If we look outside, look at a tree, okay? How does this function here? So we have the soil, which is a circle. The soil is just the soil out of which things emerge. The soil, you have a seed, and then out of the seed comes a sprout, which is a line, and it matures into a tree, which is a line. And then the tree gives off seeds, which is a circle. They fall to the ground in a circle, and then the cycle goes over, over and over again, right? So you look around and you can see these all around you. The solar system, you have the sun in the middle, and you have the planets circling around, right? So that's a circle. But what we know in a more accurate depiction of the solar system is actually we're moving forward. We're actually still hurling through space from the Big Bang. So it'd be more accurate to say that it's a spiral, right, moving through the universe. So the solar system itself is an example of that, right? Earth, you can think of Earth as you have the cycles of nature, right? So the way that the Earth is positioned, depending on the axes and the sun, determines the seasons. So you have the 4 seasons in many places. You have the cycles of the seasons. But you also have evolution, which is a line, right? Meaning, several million years ago is a very different place to be on Earth than it is now, right? Even you had different kinds of animals, you had different kinds of, and just look at kind of biological evolution as an example of that, and just the way that things change, and there's a direction, right, in the Earth itself. Even simpler example: talking and listening. Talking is a line quality. I'm active. I'm expressing, and listening, receiving. It's a circle quality. Okay, breathing in, breathing out, receiving is one of the qualities of circle. So we're breathing in, we're breathing out, and exhaling, right, is the quality of a line. And this, in many ways, it depends on the relative position of what we're talking about, right? But these are just some quick examples. Just a sort of a silly example that in everyday use we have plugs and outlets. We have a hole and we have something you put into a hole. Power tools. I mean, this goes on and on and on because it's literally everywhere. We can look at our body system and look at the way in which there's circulation and there's also moving in and out. There's actually a directionality of things. So all this is just to kind of set up this notion that lines and circles are, in some ways, we can say it's the fabric of reality. It's the fabric of space-time, if you will, is made up of lines and circles. Okay? And remember what Mark said is my ability to give my unique gift. So in other words, the ability to express my unique gift based on the needs around me depends on lines and circles in myself to be in full bloom, right? And part of the reason we use lines and circles instead of masculine and feminine today is because there's a lot of baggage that comes with these masculine and feminine words, right? We often just in our own minds, we tend to think, oh, masculine, male, feminine, female. And again, there's reasons for that. But in actuality, what we realize is that as a human evolves and develops, what is happening is these line and circle qualities are integrated within them, right? So earlier on in our lives, we tend to fixate on or express kind of one side or the other, one quality or the other. And as we continue to grow, and we can probably imagine seeing this in ourselves, 20 years ago, maybe we exhibited only one quality. Maybe we were really focused on our career and progress and kind of achievement 20 years ago, right? Which is actually a line quality. And maybe eventually we realized, oh man, I'm exhausted. And what is life for anyways? What am I here for? And we kind of reevaluate and incorporate, oh, actually I'm here for relationships. I'm here to love people and to enjoy my friends and family. And then maybe for a while we did that and realized, wait a minute, but also like working and career and vocation, maybe my vocation is what I want to do. So actually, again, kind of another line quality coming in. But as we continue to kind of at first flip-flop between these qualities, we ultimately weave them together into what's called Eros Gamos. We call it Eros Gamos, which is a Greek word that refers to the divine marriage, right? Divine marriage. Such a beautiful word because it has implication that this integration of opposites is accurate to the ultimate truth of reality, which is what another word for divine is ultimate. What's the ultimate? Divine marriage. So our own personal evolution actually is the evolution of these qualities interweaving and interpenetrating together within ourselves, right? And we can kind of one obvious thing is also to look in our relationships. A lot of times our romantic relationships, they do tend to accentuate, one person holds line qualities and the other circle qualities, but the moment the relationship breaks through is when the person holding the line qualities actually incorporates the other person's circle qualities, and the circle qualities of the other person incorporates the line, or at least can appreciate the opposite in the other, right? So, men and women are historically known to not quite understand each other in many ways. But when a man, this is just a stereotypical for a moment, archetypal, when a man is able to actually start feeling his feelings and empathizing with the woman, and the woman can feel heard and related to, then the line actually embraces the circle. Right? And when the circle, and in this case, archetypally, stereotypically, the woman is able to really honor and appreciate the value of, let's say, a man's directionality and kind of like focus and direction and kind of purpose in life, the circle reaches out and embraces the line. And that's literally a marriage, a divine marriage, if you will, that goes well. And so that's just a taste of what that might look like in terms of this teaching. So Mark also this past week went over 10 qualities of line and 10 qualities of circles. And I'm not going to go through all those now because that's beyond my pay grade at this moment. We don't have the time anyway. But what I want to do is go through a few of them and then go through a very practical step-by-step way of actually navigating them and integrating them. So you'll walk away with a practice to be able to do that. Because I think Suzanne at the beginning, if I remember correctly, you wrote somewhere like, how do we participate in this? How do we actually participate in evolution? And this is how you do it. This is one way is how you do it, is actually feel into these qualities and integrate them within ourselves. Okay, so first quality I want to focus on, and I'll just focus on 2 or 3 and we'll do this together. First quality, a line quality is autonomy. Circle quality is communion. Autonomy and communion, right? So autonomy meaning I'm alone, I do it myself, I go my own way. I don't need anyone. I'm independent, right? Communion, I'm with you. I'm relating to you. I'm connected with the community. I'm part of a group. We're all together, right? So, for example, and the way I wanted to make this to go through this, and actually what I'm going to do, because I've already given some examples, I'm going to go through with you an actual step-by-step polarity map, it's called, that will help us navigate these qualities. So what I want you to do, if everyone's ready to do this, you can do this on a piece of paper, or you can do this on your computer, or you can just do this like listening and maybe talk to the screen. Maybe I can hear you somehow. But here we go. I want you to write down autonomy and communion. Autonomy and communion, right? And then we're going to start by looking at what are the benefits of autonomy. Let's just start with that. Benefits of autonomy. And I want you to write it in the chat box. So we're going to do this together, and we're going to kind of do this polarity management map, or we can actually navigating polarities. So what are the benefits of autonomy? Go ahead and write some of those in the chat box. In autonomy, so think of, in doing this, think of a group that you're part of. Maybe it's a community, a group, maybe it's a work group, maybe you live with some people, social group, friends, whatever. Think about being in that group and actually moving towards autonomy. So I am doing my own thing. Yeah, staying freedom. Right, you feel freedom to do what you need to do. Authenticity, Becca says, you can actually go in and claim your needs, your unique talents, your gifts. Yeah, okay, we have, Ujas, right, Terry, power, achievement, money. So you can, yeah, right. So if you are autonomous, you can actually move towards what you want. You can achieve what you want. You don't have to wait for anyone. You don't have to be limited by anyone, right? You can, yeah, your confidence, there you go. Krista, you can develop your own confidence because if you can do things by yourself, that heightens your feeling of, oh, I can do things by myself, right? You can go faster in a certain sense, right? Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of benefits to autonomy. Yeah, so you can see those all in here. Diversity in depth, right? So you can, yeah, so you can go deeper by yourself in a certain way. You don't have to kind of wait for other people. Telos, Suzanne, so you can go forward, right? Yeah, exactly. So feel into that. And all of us have a tendency to fixate on one and demonize the other. So as we do this, just notice within yourself, and I'm doing it myself, right, is notice what I tend to be like, yeah, I want that, I love that. And ooh, that's not so interesting. Ooh, whatever. So just notice that, okay? And so let's just talking about the benefits of autonomy, right? And in living in community, I have a room on the bottom floor away from everyone, and there I can sort of take my space, right? And I have four other people on the second floor, but I have a little space to myself. I can do my chanting, my one mountain stuff, and not feel like I need to conform, right? There's a certain sense of that, right? So those are the benefits, and there's nothing wrong with autonomy. The only time it gets problematic is when we split off from the opposite. We overdo it and we split off from the opposite. So what happens, what would it look like if we overdid the autonomy? So what happens when we overdo autonomy? Isolation. Exactly, Becca. Loneliness. Right? So I'm in my own place. I do my own thing. I'm alone, right? Disconnection. Like what? Who am I? Well, solitude, it sounds like a good thing, Stain. So I mean, that's a positive, but loneliness can be the negative side, right? So if we overdo autonomy, we actually, it's overdone and we don't have communion, we feel disconnection. We feel, right? We feel, and Christian is going even deeper here, limits to what can we be done. So actually, we think that we can do so much on our own, but then we realize, wait a minute, I'm all alone and I need someone else to do this thing, and so can help me with that. And oh, there's other people that can really support me in this, right? So we when we overdo autonomy, that's what happens, right? So that's, and the results are all these things that we're getting to, and also narcissism, narcissistic. We start to become narcissistic. We can do, it's all about me. It's all about what I can do, right? And if any of us can imagine, if we're in that place in our lives right now, we're feeling any of these things, it's a good sign that, oh, the universe is inviting us to take the next step, which is to integrate the opposite, take action to integrate the opposite, which is communion. Okay? So anytime we feel lonely, so for example, during COVID, I had a moment where I lived alone and it was terribly lonely. And I actually left my house. I was still in the autonomy thing. I went traveling across the United States, visited some people, visited some family, and did my own thing. And I was just hopping around, literally like couch surfing for a while. It was quite, it was very ungrounded. I was autonomous. At one point, I just realized like I cannot do this anymore. I felt so unable to function in a certain way until I finally found a community house in Berkeley and I moved in. And I moved in and I felt like, oh, like I get up, I walk around, there's someone else there, there's other people doing things, there's activity. And I started to feel like just my sense of self just opened up, right? So we feel the benefits of communion. So what is some of the benefits of communion? Let's see, what are some benefits? Acceptance, yes. Love, being held and loved, right? So we actually feel like every place we fall, we have someone to catch us, right? I had a bad day, I come back, I lock eyes with my housemate, roommate, beloved, partner, friend, whatever, and suddenly I'm not so alone. And to be able to invite someone else into our pain actually makes the pain a little bit less unbearable, right? So touching and being touched, intimacy, nurturing, right? A lot of times the nurturing that we actually never got as a child, we can kind of rekindle that. We feel support, right? Yes. And then we realize, Simona, wait a minute. I actually can sometimes do more with other people than I can do alone. How interesting is that? Right? I live in a house again with a community. We share all our food. I cook only a couple days a week and somehow there's always food available. I love it. There's just always food around, right? So we encourage compassion, right? Increase humor, right? Other people can see your blind spots, right? When I'm not recognizing when I lived alone, I didn't see any of my blind spots because there was no one to show them to me, right? When I moved in with people, I learned actually how much autonomy I held on to, right? So I was kind of, I learned how to be a part of the community. Okay, so communion, it's a good thing, positive, it's beautiful, right? And let's just feel into that. This is a circle quality. Feel into that being embraced and embracing others, relating to people, being part of a community, right? Feel into that and notice if there's any, resistance to it, right? But what happens if we overdo it? What happens if we overdo it, right? What happens if we overdo communion? Well, what do you notice? Loss of personal identity. Right, exactly. So you could feel suffocation, loss of self. It could be either, kind of culty, if that's something, or you just sort of lose yourself, right? Lose yourself in it, right? So if you overdo communion, then you feel ungrounded, right? And when you notice that you've overdone it, the idea is to integrate the opposite, right? So this is a very simple, quick map. And notice that every time we integrate the opposite, we're actually moving forward. It's not balance. We're not just balancing. We're not just finding an even thing. We're not flip-flopping. We're moving forward. Because the purpose is the progressive deepening of intimacies. That's the purpose of kind of all evolutionary movement. Okay. So that was one example. And you can do this with all of the qualities of line and circle. You can do this in any situation when you feel a symptom of kind of a painful emotion. That's a symptom of an unintegrated line and circle dance or a non-intimate communion. And so it's just a kind of an indication. So if anyone wants to look up this particular exercise, it's called polarity management. And we've just brought it in with lines and circles so that you can see that that's not just a theory, it's something that we can feel into and dynamically move together. Okay, so we're coming to the end here, and again, the this sort of sums it up that what I want to kind of leave us with is that the more we can weave together lines and circles into an Eros Gamos, the more Eros moves through us. Not to be confused with Eros Gamos, Eros, Eros. The Eros Gamos actually releases Eros. It releases the energy of evolutionary impulse that wants desperately to move towards more intimacies. Christina's introduction invited us all to move towards more greater whole and intimacies. And also it helps us to, it's a requirement for our unique self to thrive, right?